The first time I died, my review notes were still open on someone else's laptop. That was the detail I remembered most clearly when my eyes opened again. Not the white ceiling above my hospital bed, not the smell of disinfectant, not even the doctor's voice saying my scholarship appeal had been rejected and my academic misconduct record would stay permanently attached to my name.
No.
What I remembered was my own handwriting, photographed, copied, rearranged, and uploaded into dorm's 7BS private group chat under someone else's name. I remembered 23 girls passing because of those notes. I remembered the same 23 girls looking away when I was accused of leaking unauthorized final mock material. I remembered standing in front of the disciplinary panel while my dorm leader, Bianca, dabbed her eyes with a tissue and whispered, "I trusted her too." Then I remembered falling, my chest tight, my mother's unanswered calls filling my screen, and the sound of the group chat pinging one last time beside my hospital pillow. Bianca had written, "At least we don't need her anymore." That was the last thing I saw before everything went black. Then I woke up to the sound of someone banging on my wardrobe door. "Mara," Bianca called, sweet as spoiled milk. "Where did you put the endocrine system summary? Everyone's waiting." My eyes snapped open. I was not in a hospital. I was not 22 and expelled from the honors pathway. I was sitting upright in the lower bunk of room 7B4 with a pen stuck to my cheek, an anatomy textbook open across my blanket, and my old cracked phone vibrating beside my thigh. Morning light cut through the thin dorm curtains. The air smelled like instant coffee, cheap floral body spray, and the wet towels Bianca always pretended were not hers. On the wall above my desk, the calendar said Monday, week 13. My throat closed. The final mock exam was on Friday. The same final mock exam that had destroyed me in my first life. The same exam my whole dorm had passed because I spent 4 sleepless nights turning the entire semester into perfect review notes, then got framed for sharing restricted content after they altered my documents and claimed I had sold them. For several seconds, I did not move. I only stared at the calendar while my heart beat so violently I could feel it in my teeth. Monday, 4 days before the mock. 4 days before Bianca cried in front of the dorm committee because I had pressured everyone into using my suspiciously accurate notes. 4 days before the dean held up printed screenshots and asked why my summaries matched the exam blueprint so closely. Back then, I had tried to explain that I built my notes from lectures, past papers, textbook outcomes, and the professor's revision hints. Back then, I had been naive enough to believe truth mattered more than 23 witnesses agreeing on a lie. I had even looked at Bianca, silently begging her to tell them what really happened. She only lowered her lashes and whispered, "Mara, please don't drag us down with you." That sentence had followed me all the way into the dark. Now she was on the other side of my wardrobe door, asking for the same notes again. I slid my feet to the cold floor and stood. My knees almost gave way, but I gripped the bed frame until the room stopped tilting. My desk was exactly as it had been that morning in my first life. A tower of color-coded flashcards, 3 notebooks with tabbed edges, a half-finished diagram of pancreatic hormones, and my laptop sleeping beneath a stack of printed lecture slides. The notes Bianca wanted were inside the blue folder. I knew because I had written them between 2 and 5 in the morning while everyone else ate spicy noodles, watched dramas, and kept sending messages like, "Mara, you're the best," and "Our dorm is definitely ranking first because of you." I had smiled then. I had believed usefulness was a kind of safety. I thought if I helped everyone, no one would have reason to hurt me. That was the stupidest equation I had ever solved. Bianca knocked again, harder this time. "Mara? Don't tell me you fell asleep again. We need to print before breakfast." Her voice carried through the door into the corridor, light and cheerful, carefully pitched so anyone passing would hear how patient she was being. Bianca was always performing. Even in pajamas, she looked like she had been arranged by a committee. Glossy black hair, clear skin, delicate gold necklace, the soft expression of a girl teachers trusted without evidence. In the first life, she had built her reputation by borrowing other people's effort and returning it as leadership. She organized study groups but never studied. She collected notes but never made them. She spoke about dorm unity while privately ranking every girl by usefulness. I had been at the top of that list until I became inconvenient. I opened the wardrobe door. Bianca stood there with her phone in one hand and a mug in the other. Behind her, half the corridor had gathered in slippers and oversized hoodies. Celia from room 7B2 leaned against the wall with a packet of biscuits. Tanya was brushing her hair with one hand and scrolling with the other. Even quiet Evie, who usually apologized when someone bumped into her, hovered near the laundry basket. Their faces were expectant, impatient, almost bored. They were not asking whether I had slept. They were not asking if I needed help. They were waiting for the machine to dispense another set of clean, organized, exam-saving notes. I looked at them one by one and felt the final thread inside me snap so quietly that no one heard it but me. "I'm not sharing notes this week," I said. At first, nobody reacted. Bianca blinked, still smiling, as if my words had arrived in a language she did not use. "What?" I said. "I'm not sharing my review notes this week." My voice sounded strange to me, calm and dry, like it belonged to an older woman standing behind my shoulder. "The final mock is on Friday. I need to focus on my own preparation." The corridor went silent. Not peaceful silent. Dangerous silent. Celia lowered her biscuit. Tanya stopped brushing mid-stroke. Bianca's smile remained, but her eyes sharpened so fast that I almost laughed. There she was, the real Bianca, surfacing through the sugar glaze. "Mara," she said slowly, "don't be silly. We always study together." "No," I said. "You always use my summaries together." A sound moved through the corridor. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered my name as if I had slapped a lecturer. Bianca's cheeks colored, but she recovered quickly. She stepped closer and lowered her voice, trying to fold me back into place privately before the audience noticed she had lost control. "Are you upset about something? Because if this is about the printer credit, I already told you I'd pay you back. You told me that 7 weeks ago." Her fingers tightened around the mug.
Fine.
"I'll transfer it now." "It's not about the printer credit." I looked past her at the others. "It's about the fact that no one has made their own notes since week 3 because everyone assumed I would do it. I'm not doing it this time." Celia scoffed. "Are you serious? 4 days before the final mock." "That's exactly why I'm serious." Tanya's mouth twisted.
Wow. Imagine gate che pingre vichon.
That word nearly made me smile. Gatekeeping. In my first life, they called it generosity when I gave them everything, suspicious when I did it well, and selfish when I stopped. "The lecture slides are on Canvas," I said. "The textbook is in the library. The professor posted the learning outcomes last month. Nothing is locked." Bianca's expression softened again, but now I could see the calculation under it. She turned slightly, so the girls behind her could see her hurt face. "Mara, I know you're stressed. We're all stressed. But this dorm works because we support each other. You're not the only one under pressure." "No," I said, "but I seem to be the only one doing the work." That was the first pattern interruption. Not the dramatic kind with thunder or someone dropping a glass. Just one sentence in a dorm corridor at 7 in the morning. But it changed the temperature of the week. Bianca stared at me, and for the first time since I had known her, she did not immediately have a beautiful answer ready. I stepped back into my room, picked up the blue folder from my desk, and placed it inside my backpack. Then I shut my laptop, zipped my bag, and walked past them toward the bathroom. No one moved aside at first. Then Evie did. She took half a step back, eyes wide, and that tiny gap was enough. I walked through it. By breakfast, the whole dorm knew. By lunch, the whole faculty residence knew. By dinner, girls from other floors were glancing at me like I had announced I was burning the library down. The rumor changed shape every hour. First, I was refusing to share because I wanted to rank first. Then I had secretly found leaked exam content and was hiding it. Then I had been warned by a professor not to distribute notes because they were too close to the mock. Bianca never said any of those things directly. She was too clever for direct lies. She only sighed in common rooms, rubbed her temples, and murmured, I just hope she knows what she's doing. If anyone fails because of this, I'll feel awful. That was how Bianca poisoned people. Not with a knife, but with perfume. You did not notice the damage until everyone around you was dizzy. In my first life, I would have defended myself immediately. I would have written long messages in the group chat explaining my feelings, apologizing for the timing, promising to share just the key parts. Then I would have stayed awake until dawn, making the notes even better because guilt was the leash they trained me with. This time, I muted the dorm chat and went to the library. Not the bright ground floor area, where everyone could see you studying and therefore reward you with social approval, but the silent postgraduate room on level 4 where the carpet smelled like dust and nobody cared if you cried over renal physiology. I took the far corner desk, opened my laptop, and did something I had not done in my first life. I studied for myself without making the material pretty enough for other people. It felt ugly at first. My notes were usually perfect. Color-coded headings, clean diagrams, boxed warnings, memory tricks, comparison tables, likely mock angle tags, and little arrows showing how professors liked to connect topics across lectures. This time, I let them be messy. I wrote questions instead of explanations. I crossed out weak reasoning. I made myself retrieve pathways from memory without looking. I left gaps and filled them later. I built a mock exam blueprint from lecture emphasis, not because I planned to share it, but because I intended to survive the week with my name still attached to my own work. Every time my phone buzzed, I looked at it once and turned it face down. Bianca had tagged me 11 times by 2 o'clock. Celia had posted a meme about people who get one good grade and forget the village. Tanya had written, "Some people only act nice when they need validation." Evie had typed nothing. At 4, Professor Harlan entered the silent room carrying a stack of journals. He was a tall, severe man with silver hair, a surgical mask hanging from one wrist, and the unsettling habit of looking directly at students until their excuses dried up. In my first life, he had been on the disciplinary panel. He had not been cruel. That almost made it worse. He had simply said, "Miss Vale, the evidence does not support your explanation." My surname from that life echoed oddly in my head.
Maravalli.
A name that had once been printed on a misconduct letter. Now Professor Harlan paused near my desk and glanced at the spread of handwritten mechanisms in front of me. "You are revising alone today," he said. I looked up too quickly. "Yes, Professor." "Good." He tapped the edge of my notebook. "Your previous group sessions looked productive, but group productivity can conceal individual weakness. Friday's mock will expose that." My fingers tightened around my pen. "Is it very different from the past papers?" His eyes flicked to mine. "It is designed to test thinking, not copying." In my first life, I had not paid attention to that warning because I was too busy translating it into notes for everyone else. This time, the sentence landed like a key turning in a lock. Designed to test thinking, not copying. That was why my summaries had helped them pass, but not excel. I had not leaked anything. I had simply taught them how to think without realizing they were memorizing my thoughts instead of developing their own. Bianca had known enough to use that against me. "Thank you, Professor," I said. He nodded once and walked away. I wrote his sentence at the top of a fresh page, then underlined it twice. When I returned to the dorm at 9 that night, room 7B4 had been rearranged like a courtroom. Bianca sat on her bed with a blanket over her lap, looking pale and noble. Celia and Tanya occupied my desk chair and the floor beside it. 3 girls from the next room were perched near the door. My laundry basket had been moved without permission. My flashcards were stacked in the center of the room, like evidence. Bianca looked up when I entered, and the murmuring stopped.
"We need to talk," she said.
"No, we don't." I crossed the room, picked up my flashcards, and placed them inside my drawer. Celia stood. "You can't just ignore everyone." "I'm not ignoring everyone. I'm refusing to be used by everyone." Tanya laughed sharply.
"Used?"
"You liked being the smart one. Don't act like we forced you." There it was, the second pattern interruption. In my first life, Tanya had been the one who submitted screenshots to the committee. I remembered her trembling voice as she said, "Mara told us not to ask where the material came from." She had looked terrified then, but not guilty. Fear made people honest sometimes. Tanya's honesty was that she would set fire to anyone if it kept her own hands warm. I looked at her now and asked, "When did you last attend Professor Harlan's lecture without asking me for the summary afterward?" Her mouth opened.
Closed.
"What about you, Celia?" I asked. "When did you last answer a practice question before checking my solution?" Celia flushed. "That's not the point." "It is exactly the point." Bianca lifted one hand, gentle and tragic. "Mara, stop attacking people." "I'm answering them. You're humiliating them."
No.
"Friday will do that if they don't study." The room went dead quiet. Bianca's eyes flashed. She hated that sentence because it removed her favorite weapon, moral fog. It made the issue simple. Study or fail. Work or don't. Ask properly or steal. She could not call simplicity cruel without revealing how much she benefited from confusion. So she changed tactics. Her lips trembled. "I didn't want to bring this up, but people are worried about your notes." My skin cooled. "Worried how?" She glanced at the others, then back at me. "They're too accurate sometimes." A memory opened beneath me like a trapdoor. Bianca in the disciplinary room, voice soft, saying, "We all wondered, but Mara got angry whenever we asked." My stomach turned, but my face stayed still. This was not beginning on Friday. It had begun here, in this room, for days earlier. The accusation was a seed. In my first life, I had watered it by panicking. This time, I let it sit in dry soil. "If you're worried," I said, "don't use them."
Bianca blinked.
"If you think my notes are suspicious, the responsible thing is not to ask for them. It's to make your own." Celia shifted. Tanya looked away. Bianca's trembling stopped for half a second, then restarted. "That's not what I meant. It's what you said." She stood, blanket sliding from her lap. "I said people are anxious because you suddenly won't share. It makes it look like you know something we don't." "I know many things you don't," I said. "That's what happens when I attend lectures." Someone made a choking sound near the door. I could not tell if it was a laugh or shock. Bianca's face hardened completely, and in that moment I saw the future version of her again. The girl in a white blouse crying under fluorescent lights while she buried me. She stepped closer, voice low. "Be careful, Mara. Acting superior right before a major exam is not a good look. Neither is threatening someone because they won't do your revision." "I'm not threatening you." "Then move away from my desk." She did not move for 3 seconds. I counted them.
1, 2,
3. Then Evie, still near the door, whispered, "Bianca, maybe we should just study." Everyone turned toward her. Evie immediately looked down, but the words had already entered the room. "A small thing. A crack in the glass." Bianca smiled at her, the kind of smile that promised punishment later. "Of course," she said. "We're studying. We're trying to make sure no one is left behind." I opened my drawer, took out a cheap padlock I had bought in my first life after someone borrowed my pharmacology flashcards and returned them with sauce stains, and locked the drawer in front of everyone. "Then start with yourselves." That night, they held an emergency study session in the common room without me. I heard them through the wall. At first, it sounded confident. Chairs scraping, laptops opening, Celia declaring she would just use the official objectives, Bianca saying they needed to divide the topics efficiently. I sat on my bed with noise-canceling headphones around my neck, not on my ears, listening while pretending not to. Within 20 minutes, confidence became confusion. Someone asked whether adrenal insufficiency caused hyperkalemia or hypokalemia. Someone else insisted thyroid storm and pheochromocytoma were basically the same because both have sweating. Tanya said insulin and glucagon were both anabolic depending on the situation, then got angry when Evie questioned it. Bianca kept saying, "Mara usually explains this with a table." By midnight, they were no longer studying. They were searching old messages for my previous summaries, screenshotting my diagrams from earlier weeks, and arguing over whether I had deliberately deleted files. I had not. I had simply stopped feeding the machine. On Tuesday morning, the machine bit back. My name appeared on the dorm notice board under a printed anonymous complaint. concern regarding unfair academic conduct and resource hoarding in Dorm 7B. I stood in front of it with a cup of coffee cooling in my hand while girls pretended not to stare. The complaint was written in that fake official style students use when they want gossip to look like ethics. It said some students had become dependent on a peer's monopolized study resources, that this peer had withdrawn access at a critical time, and that there were questions surrounding whether said resources were created independently. It did not name me. It did not need to. Someone had drawn a tiny blue folder in the margin. In my first life, I would have torn the paper down and cried in the bathroom. This time, I took a photo. Then, I took another with a notice board clock visible. Then, I walked to the residence office. Mrs. Calloway, the residence supervisor, looked up from her tea when I entered. She was a compact woman with sharp glasses and a sharper sense of paperwork. Students feared her because she remembered everything, including who had signed out the vacuum in March and never returned it. "Mara," she said, "you're early. I want to report an anonymous harassment notice." Her eyebrows rose. "Show me." I handed her my phone. She studied the photo. Her mouth tightened. "Is this still on the board?" "Yes." "Did you remove it?"
No. Good.
She stood, already reaching for her keys. "Come with me." That was the third pattern interruption. Bianca expected me to defend myself socially, where she controlled the weather. Instead, I moved the matter into administration, where every cloud required a form. Mrs. Calloway removed the notice with gloved hands like it was contaminated evidence. She checked the corridor camera schedule. She asked who had access to the printer before breakfast. She wrote down the time. By 8:30, the dorm group chat was no longer laughing. By 9, Bianca posted, "Whoever made that notice, please come forward privately. This is not the supportive environment we want." I almost admired her. She could stand beside a fire with matches in her pocket and still ask who smelled smoke. The first lecture that day was endocrine pathology. Professor Harlan entered without greeting, placed one sheet of paper on the document camera, and projected a clinical case. A woman with weight loss, tremor, irregular heartbeat, heat intolerance, and a neck swelling. 5 minutes, he said. Write the diagnosis, pathophysiology, expected lab findings, and first-line management priorities. Closed book. A ripple of panic moved through the theater. In my first life, I had already taught Dorm 7B a neat hyperthyroidism table by then. They had memorized the table, not the disease. This time, I saw Celia staring at the blank page. Tanya chewed her pen. Bianca sat 3 rows ahead, perfectly still, as if stillness could become knowledge through posture. I wrote, "Graves' disease likely, autoimmune IgG stimulating TSH receptor, low TSH, high T3/T4, diffuse goiter, sympathetic symptoms, manage acute risk with beta blockade, antithyroid therapy, consider definitive options depending on context." Then I added differential notes because Harlan liked traps. Thyroid storm if febrile delirium, toxic multinodular goiter if older with nodular gland, factitious thyrotoxicosis if low thyroglobulin and no uptake. When time ended, he collected a few answers at random. He chose mine. He read the differential section aloud, expression unchanged, then said, "This is how you protect yourself from a familiar question becoming unfamiliar." I felt the theater turn toward me. I did not turn back. After lecture, Bianca intercepted me near the stairwell. She was alone this time. That meant she was either desperate or dangerous. "You're enjoying this," she said. "I'm enjoying my education." "You embarrassed everyone." Professor Harlan set the question. "You knew he would." I tilted my head. "Did I?" Her eyes narrowed. "This is what I mean. You act innocent, but somehow you always know what matters. That's called studying the course." "No," she said quietly. "That's called hiding things." For 1 second, the old fear rose so sharply, I tasted metal. Accusations do not need evidence to hurt you. They only need repetition. I saw the disciplinary panel again. I saw my mother sitting outside, hands folded around a prayer card, unable to understand how a girl who never cheated at card games could be accused of academic fraud. I saw Bianca's tissue. Then the fear passed, leaving something cleaner behind. Say that in writing, I said.
Bianca blinked.
What? If you think I'm hiding unauthorized material, send your concern to Professor Harlan and copy me in. Use specific evidence. Her lips parted. Or stop implying it. She stepped back as if I had pushed her. You've changed. Yes, I said. That's the first correct thing you've said all week. The thing about refusing to be useful is that people who depended on your usefulness first call you selfish, then unstable, then suspicious. By Tuesday afternoon, I had become all three. In the cafeteria, girls at the next table lowered their voices when I sat down. In the bathroom, 2 first-years stopped talking when I walked in. Someone slid a photocopied page under my door with only one sentence written across it. A real friend does not let others fail. I taped it above my desk like a motivational quote. Then I wrote beneath it, a real student studies. Evie saw it when she came in to borrow a charger and covered her mouth, trying not to smile. She was the only one who still entered my side of the room without acting like I carried a disease. Evie slept in the bunk above mine, though she spent so much time avoiding conflict that people forgot she was there. In my first life, she had not spoken against me at the panel, but she had not defended me either. I had hated her for that when everything collapsed. Later, in the final weeks before my death, I found out she had tried to submit a statement saying Bianca had pressured everyone, but Tanya told her the dorm would make her life impossible if she did. The statement never reached the committee. Fear had swallowed it. This time, Evie stood near my desk, twisting the charger cord around her fingers. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask. I might not answer." "That's fair." She glanced at the door. "Are you really not sharing anything?" "Correct." "Not even if someone asks nicely?" I looked at her. Evie's face was pale, but not entitled. That distinction mattered. "Are you asking for my notes or for help understanding something?" She swallowed. "Understanding. I try to make my own table for adrenal disorders, and I think I made it worse." I should have said no. The cleanest revenge would have been total refusal. Let the whole dorm burn. Let Evie fail with the rest, and learn that silence has consequences. But Rebirth had not turned me into Bianca. I did not want worship. I wanted boundaries. There was a difference between refusing to be exploited and refusing to be human. "Bring your table," I said. "I'll ask you questions. I won't give you my notes." Her shoulders dropped with relief. "That's more than enough." We studied for 40 minutes. Not in secret, not dramatically, not with whispered alliances. Evie sat on the floor with her messy table, and I made her explain each disorder aloud. Addison's, Cushing's, Conn's, pheochromocytoma, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Every time she looked at me for confirmation too quickly, I looked back and waited. At first, she hated the silence. Then she began filling it herself. By the end, her table was still uglier than mine would have been, but it was hers. When she finally understood why primary adrenal insufficiency caused high ACTH and hyperpigmentation, she actually laughed. "I thought I was stupid," she said. "You are outsourcing the part where your brain struggles," I said. "That part is necessary." She nodded slowly. Then she looked toward the door. "They're going to hate that you helped me." "I didn't help you cheat. I helped you think." "That won't matter to them." "I know." The next morning, Wednesday, my laptop disappeared. I noticed at 6:12 a.m. because I woke before my alarm with the old life habit of checking whether my documents were safe. My desk was too clean. The space beneath my lecture slides was empty. For one breath, my body forgot this was a new life and reacted as if the old punishment had already arrived. My hands went numb. My ears filled with a rushing sound. Then I saw the thin smear of silver glitter on the desk edge and became calm. Bianca used glitter hand cream. She had once told us it was imported and subtle. Nothing about Bianca was subtle, if you knew where to look. I did not scream. I did not wake the room. I picked up my phone, photographed the desk, the glitter smear, and the charger still plugged into the wall. Then I opened the tracking app one had installed Monday night. In my first life, my laptop had accidentally been borrowed the night before the mock. It returned by morning, but several documents had been copied and renamed. I had not realized until the panel showed me screenshots. This time, I had prepared. The tracker placed my laptop in the old music practice room on level 2. I walked there in slippers and a hoodie, phone recording in my pocket. The corridor was empty except for a cleaning cart near the lift. The practice room door was not fully closed. Through the gap, I heard Celia whisper, hurry up," and Tanya snap, "I don't know her password." Bianca's voice followed, lower and colder than she ever used in public. Try her birthday. Or her mother's. People like Mara always use something sentimental. I pushed the door open. 3 faces turned toward me. My laptop sat on the piano bench. Tanya's hand froze above the keyboard. Celia made a small, terrified noise. Bianca recovered first, of course. She straightened, hair falling perfectly over one shoulder. Mara, we were just borrowing my laptop without permission?
I said.
We found it unattended, she said smoothly. In my room. Celia looked at the floor. Bianca's eyes flicked to my hoodie pocket. She was wondering if I was recording.
Good.
Wondering would do more work than certainty. Your door was open, she said. We thought maybe you left it in the common area, and someone put it back. We were going to return it. My door was closed. My laptop was under my lecture slides. Tanya was trying passwords. Tanya stood so fast the bench screeched, because we thought it was Celia's at first. My laptop has a sticker with my name on it. Celia whispered. Bianca said, then stopped. Bianca turned her head very slowly. Celia. The warning in her voice was so sharp that even Tanya flinched. I walked across the room, picked up my laptop, and checked the login screen. 3 failed attempts. I photographed it.
Bianca laughed softly.
Are you documenting this like a crime scene? Yes. Her smile thinned. You're being ridiculous. You stole my laptop 4 days before the mock after publicly questioning my academic integrity. We didn't steal anything. It was a misunderstanding. Then you'll have no problem explaining it to Mrs. Calloway. Celia began crying before we reached the residence office. Tanya kept saying, this is insane, as if repetition could turn consequences into weather. Bianca said nothing. She walked beside us with her chin up, already building her next version of events. When Mrs. Calloway opened her office door and saw all 4 of us, her expression did not change, but I saw her eyes land on my laptop, then on Bianca's glittering hands. Paperwork had found its queen. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. Bianca tried concern first. She said they were worried about me isolating myself and wanted to check whether I had slept. Mrs. Calloway asked why that required removing my laptop from my room. Bianca shifted to confusion. She said Celia thought the laptop was communal because I often used it during group study. Mrs. Calloway asked why Tanya had attempted passwords. Bianca shifted to hurt. She said my sudden hostility had created misunderstandings. Mrs. Calloway asked whether hostility disabled reading comprehension of property labels. That was the first time I nearly smiled. Then Mrs. Calloway asked me to play my recording. Bianca went still. I placed my phone on the desk and played the audio. Tanya's whisper filled the room. I don't know her password. Then Bianca's voice. Try her birthday. Or her mother's. People like Mara always use something sentimental. Celia covered her face. Tanya said, oh my God. Bianca looked at me with naked hatred for exactly 1 second before rearranging herself into shock. Mrs. Calloway stopped the recording. This matter will be documented. Bianca's voice trembled. Documented how? As unauthorized removal of another student's property, attempted access to a personal device, and potential academic misconduct concerns given the timing. The words academic misconduct hit Bianca like cold water. In my first life, those words had belonged to me. They had followed me into interviews, scholarship appeals, and my mother's worried silence. Hearing them aimed correctly did not feel triumphant. It felt like balance. Bianca leaned forward. Mrs. Calloway, please. If this goes on record before Friday, It could affect our ability to sit the mock. Then perhaps, Mrs. Calloway said, you should have studied instead of stealing a laptop. No one spoke. By Wednesday afternoon, the dorm had split into factions. Not moral factions. Survival factions. Celia cried publicly and said Bianca had pressured her. Tanya insisted everyone was overreacting because no files were actually accessed. Bianca stayed in her room for 3 hours, then emerged in a white cardigan with red eyes, looking like a wronged saint painted by someone who hated accountability. She posted in the group chat, I take responsibility for trying to protect the dorm from uncertainty. My methods may have been misunderstood, but my intention was never harmful. Under it, she added a heart. I replied for the first time all week. Trying passwords on someone's laptop is not protection. The chat exploded. Celia sent, I'm sorry, Mara. Tanya sent, you're twisting everything. Someone from room 7B1 asked, wait, did they actually take your laptop? Another girl wrote, can we focus on the mock? Some of us are panicking. Bianca did not reply. She did not need to. Her silence became a stage where everyone projected what suited them. But the balance had shifted. Before, I was selfish for withholding notes. Now, they had to explain why their need for notes led them to a locked practice room at dawn. That evening, Professor Harlan posted a final announcement. The mock examination will proceed as scheduled. Students are reminded that the purpose of the mock is diagnostic. Attempts to obtain, distribute, or rely upon unauthorized materials will be referred immediately. The announcement was only 4 sentences, but it landed in Dorm 7B like a brick through glass. Diagnostic meant the mock did not count toward the official grade, but it determined access to the final intensive workshop, recommendation letters, and scholarship interview eligibility. In our program, failing the mock did not destroy you on paper. It destroyed the version of you that professors believed in. Bianca needed that belief. Her entire academic identity was built on being polished enough that no one checked the foundation. The dorm common room became a disaster zone. Highlighters rolled under couches. Empty energy drink cans lined the windowsill. Someone cried over renal compensation. Someone else shouted that all hormones sound the same. I sat at the far table with Evie, both of us working through practice cases. We did not whisper. We did not hide. When she got stuck, I asked, what is the first abnormal variable? Or which feedback loop is broken? Or what would you expect the lab value to do if the gland itself failed? It was slower than giving her my notes. It was also better. Across the room, Bianca watched us over the top of her laptop. Her face was blank, but her pen had stopped moving. At 10, she approached. Conversations faded as she crossed the common room. I did not look up until her shadow fell across my page. Can we speak privately? She asked.
No.
Her fingers tightened around her notebook. Mara, you've had many private chances this week. Use public words. A few girls looked down quickly, pretending to study. Bianca inhaled, then smiled sadly.
Fine.
Publicly, then. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding with your laptop. Which part was the misunderstanding?
Her jaw flexed.
I'm trying to apologize.
No.
You're trying to reduce the number of witnesses who understand what happened. The room went so quiet I could hear the vending machine hum. Bianca's eyes shone. Why are you doing this to me? That sentence. Perfectly chosen. Not. Why did I do this to you? Not. How do I fix what I did? She made herself the object, then the victim, then the center. In my first life, I would have rushed to comfort her because her tears made everyone look at me like I was holding a weapon. This time, I leaned back in my chair. I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm not sharing my notes. I'm not letting you steal my laptop. I'm not accepting fake apologies. Everything else is your own work. Bianca stared at me. Her tears did not fall. That was how I knew they were tools waiting for the right audience. Then Evie spoke. Her voice was small, but the room was silent enough to carry it. Bianca, we should study. Bianca turned. Excuse me? Evie's hands shook around her pen. The mock is in 2 days. This isn't helping. For a moment, Bianca looked more shocked by Evie than by me. People like Bianca understood enemies. They did not understand furniture becoming a person. Her gaze moved around the room, searching for support. Celia avoided her eyes. Tanya looked furious, but uncertain. The other girls pretended to read. Bianca had spent years building a kingdom of borrowed effort and social fear. Now, with one mock exam approaching and no notes to distribute, everyone could feel the walls were made of paper. She smiled at Evie. "You're right," she said. "We should study." Then she returned to her table and opened her textbook upside down. Thursday was the day desperation became comedy. Not funny comedy. The kind that makes you understand why ancient people wrote tragedies about pride and called them entertainment. At breakfast, Celia offered me $300 for just the diagrams. I said no. By mid-morning, Tanya created a shared document titled Dorm 7B Emergency Review Master Sheet, then accidentally gave everyone editing access, and the definitions of hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, and hypoparathyroidism were overwritten 6 times by lunch. Someone inserted a meme of a skeleton. Someone else deleted the renal section. Bianca restored an old version that contained only the words Mara's old table, repeated in 4 places. At 2, 2 girls from room 7B3 tried to reconstruct my flashcard system from memory and labeled aldosterone as a thyroid hormone. At 4, Celia asked the official course forum whether feedback loop questions are examinable, and Professor Harlan replied, "Yes. Just yes. Nothing else." The dorm treated it like a death announcement. I spent Thursday in the library, not because I was above panic, but because I knew panic loved company. My own fear came in waves. What if I failed anyway? What if rebirth was not a guarantee, but a test? What if Bianca found another way to frame me?
What if the exam changed?
What if I had misunderstood everything, and my refusal only made me cruel? Each question tried to pull me away from the page. I answered them with work. Practice case. Explain aloud.
Check. Correct. Repeat.
My notes became less beautiful and more alive. By evening, when Professor Harlan held an optional revision clinic, I attended with 5 specific questions. Bianca arrived with half the dorm and a face arranged into humble seriousness. She asked, "Professor, for students who have experienced disruption in their study resources this week, will the mock account for that?" Harlan looked at her over his glasses. "The mock accounts for 13 weeks of learning." A few students coughed. Bianca's smile flickered. "Of course. I only mean that some students relied on collaborative review systems that became unavailable unexpectedly. Then the mock will also diagnose over-reliance on collaborative review systems." I lowered my eyes to my notebook, because if I looked at Evie, I would laugh. Bianca sat down without another word. The revision clinic was brutal, in the way useful things are brutal. Harlan did not give hints. He gave cases that looked simple until he changed one lab value. He asked what happened if the pituitary failed instead of the target gland. He asked why 2 patients with similar symptoms had opposite hormone levels. He asked what management priority came first if the diagnosis was obvious but the patient was unstable. Around me, pens moved frantically. Bianca wrote with elegant speed, but I noticed she kept copying the wording of questions, not the reasoning of answers. That had always been her weakness. She could reproduce the shape of intelligence. She could not generate it under pressure. After the clinic, I stayed behind to ask Harlan about a confusing calcium regulation case. He answered, then paused while packing his bag. "Miss Vale." "Yes, Professor?" "Your residence supervisor informed me of a property incident." My mouth went dry. "Yes.
It has been documented.
If anyone attempts to involve your name in unauthorized sharing, inform me immediately." For a second, I could not respond. In my first life, no one had said anything like that until it was too late. Protection had always seemed like a door that opened for other people. Now Harlan was not comforting me, not praising me, not promising rescue. He was simply establishing a record. A record could not love you, but it could stand when witnesses fell. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. "And Miss Vale?" "Yes. Do not let other students convince you that boundaries are misconduct." I walked back to the dorm under a sky the color of wet slate, holding that sentence like a warm cup between both hands. Mock day arrived with rain. Heavy rain, the kind that turned the campus paths silver and made everyone enter the exam hall damp, irritated, and smelling faintly of umbrellas. I woke at 5 without needing an alarm. For a moment, I lay still in the dark and listened to the dorm breathing. Above me, Evie whispered formulas to herself. Across the room, Bianca's bed was empty. She had gone to the common room sometime before dawn, probably to be seen studying heroically. I dressed quietly, braided my hair, ate 2 boiled eggs and half a banana because nerves hated empty stomachs, and checked my bag 3 times. Student ID, pens, clear water bottle, approved calculator. Nothing else.
No luose papers. No flashcards.
No notes someone could slip into my things. In my first life, Tanya had claimed I brought folded summaries into the hall. This time, my bag was so clean it looked staged because it was. At 7, Evie climbed down from her bunk, pale but steady. "I think I'm going to throw up," she said. "Do it before the exam, not during." She stared at me, then laughed once, surprised. That was horrible. It was practical. Bianca entered while Evie was tying her shoes. She looked flawless. White blouse, navy skirt, hair clipped back, skin glowing in that expensive way that made exhaustion look like discipline. But her eyes were wrong. Too bright. Too fixed. She looked at my clear pencil case and smiled. Traveling light? Yes. No last-minute miracles? I zipped my bag. Only preparation. Her smile widened. We'll see. The exam hall was arranged in long rows with 2 empty seats between each student. Professor Harlan stood at the front beside 2 invigilators and a stack of sealed papers. The rain hammered the high windows. The room smelled like wet coats and adrenaline. I found my assigned seat in row D. Bianca was 3 rows ahead and 2 columns left. Celia sat near the aisle, bouncing one knee. Tanya was behind me somewhere. I could feel her anger like a heater at my back. Evie sat across the room, hands folded, lips moving silently through feedback loops. Before distributing papers, Harlan spoke. This mock examination is diagnostic. It is not a memory contest. Read carefully. Think physiologically. If you do not know an answer immediately, identify what the question is truly testing. You may begin when instructed. The papers landed face down. My pulse slowed. That was new. In my first life, I had entered the mock exhausted, resentful, and terrified of disappointing everyone. I had spent the night before answering Bianca's messages instead of sleeping. My own score had been high but not exceptional, and that had made the accusation easier. How did so many students perform similarly? This time, I was not carrying 23 girls on my back. I was carrying 1 pen. Begin. I turned the paper over. The first question was not on my predicted list. My heart kicked. A patient with fatigue, abdominal pain, low blood pressure, hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, and increased skin pigmentation. But the question did not ask for the diagnosis. It asked which part of the endocrine axis was failing and why the pigmentation occurred. Addison's disease. Primary adrenal insufficiency. High ACTH from reduced cortisol feedback. ACTH derived from POMC, associated melanocyte stimulating activity. I wrote calmly. The second question looked like diabetes, but tested osmotic diuresis and electrolyte shifts. The third looked like thyroid storm, but included a medication history pointing to a amiodarone-induced thyrotoxicosis. Harlan was doing exactly what he had promised. Familiar doors, unfamiliar locks. By question 12, I heard the first sniffle. By question 18, someone dropped a pen and did not pick it up for several seconds. By the short answer section, the room had changed. The students who had studied by thinking leaned forward. The students who had studied by collecting leaned back as if distance might soften the page. Bianca turned her exam paper over twice, searching for a question that looked like my old tables. There were none. Not because my notes had been wrong, but because notes are maps. They are not legs. You still have to walk. Halfway through, I reached a case about calcium, albumin, and seizure risk. For one dizzy moment, memory overlapped with the past. In my first life, I had explained corrected calcium to the dorm at midnight while Bianca painted her nails. Tanya had said, "Too detailed. Just tell us what to memorize." On the mock, several girls wrote that low albumin caused low ionized calcium and therefore seizures. My notes had clearly warned against that. They copied the conclusion without understanding the condition. This time, I wrote, "Low albumin lowers total calcium. Ionized may remain normal. Symptoms depend on ionized calcium. Check corrected calcium and clinical context." Then I moved on. When Harlan called 10 minutes remaining, the room made a sound I will never forget. Not a groan exactly. A collective internal collapse escaping through teeth. I reviewed my answers, corrected one careless lab value, and placed my pen down with 30 seconds left. Bianca was still writing when time ended. The invigilator had to stand beside her desk before she stopped. Her face, when she looked up, was not tearful or angry. It was blank with disbelief. For the first time in her life, perhaps, Bianca had encountered a locked door that did not open because she smiled at it. Results were released that evening. They should not have been. Usually, Harlan took 2 days. But diagnostic exams were machine scanned for multiple choice and quickly marked for short answers by teaching assistants. At 6:03 p.m., the portal crashed because too many students logged in at once. At 6:11, it loaded. I sat at my desk, door closed, Evie on the floor beside me because she did not want to check alone. My hands were steady until I clicked. Then they shook.
Maravilha, 91%.
For a moment, I saw nothing else. Not the percentile. Not the feedback. Just the number. 91. Higher than my first life. High enough for the intensive workshop. High enough for scholarship interview eligibility. High enough that no one could call my work suspicious because this time there was no shared performance pattern around me. It was mine. Messy notes, locked drawer, lonely library desk, mine. Evie made a strangled sound. "I passed," she whispered. I turned. Her screen showed 68%. Not brilliant. Not workshop level. But above the threshold. Honestly earned. Her eyes filled with tears. "I passed." "You passed." I actually understood some of it. That tends to help. She laughed and cried at the same time, then covered her face. I let her have the moment. Across the hall, someone screamed. Not happy screamed. A chair crashed. Doors opened. The dorm woke into disaster. Celia had scored 42%. Tanya 39%. 2 girls from room 7B3 had scored in the 30s. A first year, who had been attending our review sessions for extra preparation, scored 28%. Bianca's score did not appear in the group chat at first, which told me everything. People who rank well post vague inspirational quotes. People who barely pass post humble gratitude. People who fail disappear. But the dorm was too panicked to respect privacy. Celia, sobbing, wrote, "Bianca, what did you get?" Tanya wrote, "Everyone say scores, so we know if scaling will help." Bianca did not answer. Then someone from the student portal committee leaked the ranking screenshot into a private chat that became public within 3 minutes.
Bianca Lorne, 31%.
For 10 seconds, the whole dorm seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos. Celia began crying loudly enough that Mrs. Calloway came upstairs. Tanya shouted that the exam was unfair. Someone accused Harlan of testing content not taught, which was immediately disproven when another student posted lecture slide numbers beside the questions. 2 girls called their parents. One locked herself in the bathroom. The common room filled with damp tissues, open laptops, and the sour smell of energy drinks abandoned mid-panic. The final mock had done exactly what it was designed to do. It diagnosed over-reliance. It diagnosed entitlement. It diagnosed the difference between borrowing a map and learning the road. Bianca emerged at 7:30. Her hair was loose. Her face was pale. She walked into the common room like a queen entering a plague ward and stood near the notice board. "Everyone," she said, voice trembling, "please calm down." No one calmed down. Celia turned on her first. "You said we could manage without Mara's notes."
Bianca flinched.
We could have if people had followed the plan. What plan? Tanya snapped. Your plan was to get Mara's laptop. The room froze. Bianca's eyes flashed. Tanya. No, Tanya said, panic burning through loyalty. Don't Tanya me. You told us she was hiding the final pattern. You said if we got her notes, we'd know what to focus on. Celia sobbed harder. You said she owed us. Bianca looked around the room and realized too late that failure had changed the social mathematics. Before the mock, they needed her approval. After the mock, they needed a scapegoat. She had trained them well. They chose the nearest one. I tried to keep this dorm together, Bianca said, voice rising. Mara divided us. Every head turned toward me. I had been standing in the doorway with Evie behind me, not hiding, not entering. In the old life, that many eyes would have crushed me. This time, I felt strangely tired. Not weak. Just tired of watching people mistake consequences for cruelty.
Bianca pointed at me.
She knew this would happen. She watched us struggle all week. She helped Evie and refused everyone else. She wanted us to fail. The accusation landed. Some faces hardened again. Desperation loves a simple villain, and I was still convenient. Evie stepped forward, but I touched her wrist lightly. This part was mine. I wanted you to study, I said. Bianca laughed, sharp and ugly.
No.
You wanted revenge because we didn't worship you enough. I walked into the room. Revenge for what? She hesitated. Just half a beat. Enough. For being taken for granted, she said. That's interesting, I said. Because all week you told people I was suspicious. You put up a complaint about resource hoarding. You stole my laptop. You tried to imply my notes were unauthorized. Now that you've failed, the story is that I planned revenge. Bianca's eyes glittered. You recorded us. Yes. You documented everything like you expected conflict. Yes. The room murmured. I looked at each of them, then back at Bianca. Because the first time someone hints you cheated, then tries to steal your laptop, then cries in public about being harmed, you should document everything. Tanya crossed her arms. No one said you cheated. I took out my phone and opened the screenshot folder. Anonymous complaint. Questions surrounding whether said resources were created independently. Bianca in the stairwell. Somehow you always know what matters. Bianca in the practice room. Try her birthday or her mother's. Would you like more? No one answered. Bianca's face had gone very still. You're enjoying humiliating me. No, I said. I'm refusing to disappear quietly while you rewrite the week. Mrs. Calloway appeared behind the crowd at the worst possible moment for Bianca and the best possible moment for truth. Is there a reason my corridor sounds like a courtroom? No one spoke. I turned. Mrs. Calloway, I'd like to formally report that Bianca is accusing me of intentionally causing dorm students to fail and implying misconduct again. Bianca's mouth opened. That is not. Mrs. Calloway lifted one hand. Office. Now. This time, the meeting did not last 47 minutes. It lasted 2 hours because Harlan joined by video call. So did the academic integrity officer. So did the assistant dean after Tanya, in a spectacular act of self-preservation, forwarded screenshots of Bianca telling the dorm, Mara's notes are the only reason she ranks. Without them, she's nothing special, and we need to know what she knows. Celia provided voice messages. Evie provided the study table she had made herself, proving I had not given her my notes. I provided the recording, the photos, the anonymous complaint, and my clean exam bag checklist because paranoia, when disciplined, becomes evidence.
Bianca cried beautifully.
At first. She said the pressure of the mock had overwhelmed her. She said I had created emotional distress by withdrawing support abruptly. She said the dorm culture had always been collaborative and I had changed the rules without warning. She said she never intended to access private files, only to verify academic safety. That phrase almost made Harlan close his eyes. The academic integrity officer asked her what specific unauthorized material she believed was on my laptop. Bianca said she did not know. The officer asked why she attempted passwords if she did not know. Bianca said Tanya had done that independently. Tanya made us sound like a kettle boiling. Then Harlan asked one question. Miss Lorne, did Miss Vale ever represent her personal notes as required course materials? Bianca wiped her cheeks. No, but everyone depended on them. Dependence does not create entitlement, Harlan said. The sentence entered the room and ended something. By 10 that night, the official outcome was temporary but clear. The dorm property incident would remain on record. Bianca, Celia, and Tanya were referred for conduct review regarding attempted unauthorized access. The academic office found no basis to investigate me. Harlan's mock feedback would be released individually, with mandatory remedial workshops for students below 50. Recommendation eligibility would stand. No group appeal. No dorm-wide excuse.
No scaling rescue.
When we returned upstairs, the corridor was silent. The kind of silence that follows a storm when everyone is checking what the wind took. Bianca walked ahead of me, shoulders stiff, no longer crying. At her door, she turned. For once, no audience stood behind her. You think you won, she said. I was too tired to perform victory.
No.
I think I stopped losing for someone else. Her lips pressed together. They'll forgive me. Probably. They'll forget this. Maybe. She stepped closer. But they won't like you. That was meant to hurt. In my first life it would have. I had mistaken being liked for being safe, being needed for being valued, being included for being protected. Now I looked at Bianca and felt almost sorry for both versions of us. The girl who survived by controlling rooms and the girl who nearly died trying to be welcomed by them. I can live with that, I said. She stared at me as if I had spoken the most frightening words imaginable. The weekend after the mock was uglier than the failure itself. Failure can be dramatic for one night, but consequences are administrative, and administration has stamina. Students below 50 had to attend remedial sessions at 8 in the morning. Workshop invitations went out Saturday afternoon. My name was on the list. Bianca's was not. Celia's parents called the residence office and demanded to know why their daughter's support system had collapsed. Mrs. Calloway replied, according to hallway legend, that the university provided libraries, lecturers, tutors, and office hours, not one unpaid girl in room 7B4. Tanya tried to start a petition against the mock and got 12 signatures, 8 of which were from students who had passed but enjoyed drama. Harlan responded by posting a 20-page feedback document mapping every question to lecture objectives. The petition died of evidence exposure. For me, the strangest part was not their failure. It was the space their demands left behind. My days became wider. I woke early and studied without messages asking, "Can you make this simpler?" I ate breakfast without someone sliding into the seat beside me and saying, "Quick question," then taking 40 minutes. I showered without rehearsing apologies for needing time alone. I discovered that silence was not loneliness when no one was using it to punish me. Sometimes Evie studied with me, but she no longer asked for answers. She brought ugly tables, wrong attempts, half-built explanations. She began enjoying the moment concepts clicked. She still feared conflict, but she had started answering questions in tutorials, voice shaking and correct. On Sunday evening, she found me in the laundry room folding towels. "Celia wants to apologize," she said. I did not look up. To reduce her conduct penalty or because she is sorry? Evie winced. Both, probably. At least that's honest. She's outside. I placed a towel into my basket. Of course she is. Celia entered with red eyes and no makeup, which for her was practically a confession. She held her phone in both hands. "Mara," she said, "I'm sorry." I waited. She swallowed. "I'm sorry I treated your work like it belonged to everyone. I'm sorry I helped take your laptop. I'm sorry I blamed you when I failed." Her voice cracked. "And I'm sorry because I don't think I would be saying all this if we hadn't been caught, and that makes it worse." That surprised me. Not enough to erase anything, but enough to make me listen. Celia wiped her face with her sleeve. "I don't know how to study. I know that sounds pathetic, but I don't. In high school, my friends made Quizlets. Last semester, my boyfriend made summaries.
This semester you did.
I thought being smart meant knowing who to ask. It means knowing when to stop asking. She nodded, crying silently now. I know you don't owe me help. I'm not asking. I just wanted to say it properly. A cleaner pushed a cart past the laundry room door, glanced at all of us, and wisely kept moving. I picked up my basket. Your apology does not make us friends. I know. It also does not remove the conduct report. I know. But if you go to the remedial workshop and make your own notes, you probably won't fail the real final. Her face crumpled with relief, so raw it embarrassed both of us. Okay. That was the difference between Celia and Bianca. Celia had borrowed cruelty because it was socially convenient. Bianca manufactured it because control required supply. One could learn. The other could only rebrand. On Monday, the intensive workshop began. It was held in Seminar Room 3, the one with glass walls facing the courtyard, so everyone passing could see who had qualified. That detail mattered more than anyone admitted. Academia pretends not to have theater, but every door has an audience if the stakes are high enough. I sat near the front, not hiding. Evie did not qualify, but she gave me a thumbs up through the glass on her way to remedial. I smiled despite myself. Harlan began with a case, so difficult the room collectively forgot to posture. For 3 hours, we worked through endocrine emergencies, renal compensation, metabolic derangements, and clinical reasoning under pressure. It was the kind of session I had once dreamed of attending but nearly lost because I was busy dragging other people toward thresholds they did not respect. At the break, a student from another dorm sat beside me. Her name was Priya, and she had ranked second in the mock. You're Mara, right? She asked. Yes. I saw your calcium answer in the anonymized feedback. It was good. Thanks. She opened a container of cut fruit. Do you want to review cases together sometime? Not note sharing. Actual review. We each bring questions. For a second, I did not know how to answer. Healthy collaboration sounded suspicious when you had only known extraction. Yes, I said finally. That would be good. And it was. That was the part Bianca would never understand. I had not stopped sharing because I wanted to sit alone on a throne of notebooks. I stopped sharing because what we had was never sharing. It was a one-way drain decorated as sisterhood. With Priya, review felt different. She challenged my assumptions. I caught her mistakes. She brought diagrams better than mine in some areas and terrible acronyms in others. Neither of us collapsed when corrected. Neither of us turned help into debt. By the end of the week, I understood more than I had before, not because I gave less, but because I finally studied with people who gave back. Bianca did not disappear. People like Bianca rarely disappear. They adapt. She began attending remedial sessions in simple sweaters, hair tied low, face bare, performing humility with the same precision she once performed excellence. She apologized to the dorm in a long message that used the word pressure 6 times and Mara only once. Some girls accepted immediately because accepting was easier than admitting they had followed her. Tanya did not. Their alliance ended in a shouting match outside the vending machines when Tanya accused Bianca of acting like the only victim. Bianca replied, "At least I didn't panic and expose everyone." Mrs. Calloway appeared from nowhere and said, "Would either of you like to continue this in writing?" They separated instantly. The real final exam approached like whether everyone could feel in their bones. The mock had been a warning. Some students used it. Some resented it. Dorm 7B became quieter, not kinder exactly, but less delusional. The common room filled with individual notes. Bad notes, mostly. Ugly diagrams. Wrong arrows. Half-finished tables.
But they were making them.
Celia attended office hours and returned looking traumatized but enlightened. Evie became strangely good at explaining adrenal axes because she had struggled through them honestly. Tanya kept complaining, but her complaints slowly became questions, which was annoying but still progress. Bianca studied alone most nights. I sometimes felt her watching me, not with triumph now, but with a kind of cold curiosity. She had not forgiven me for surviving her. 3 days before the real final, she tried one last time. I was leaving the library at dusk when I found her waiting near the stairwell. No audience.
No tears. No cardigan softness.
Just Bianca in a black coat, hair loose, face unreadable. I want to make a deal, she said.
No.
You didn't hear it. I recognized the speaker. Her mouth tightened. I can clear your reputations socially. I almost laughed. You damaged it socially. And I can repair it. People listen to me. Less than before. Still more than they listen to you. That was true enough to be interesting. I shifted my bag higher on my shoulder. What do you want? Your final prediction framework. Not my notes. I'm not stupid enough to ask that now. She stepped closer. I know you built a framework. The mock score proved it. You identify what Harlan will test by lecture emphasis, clinical integration, and feedback language. I don't need your summaries. I need the framework. There she was again, circling the locked door, looking for a hinge. I could almost admire the evolution. Theft had become negotiation. Entitlement had put on professional shoes. And in exchange, I said, "You'll tell people I'm not selfish? I'll tell them you were under pressure and that I misunderstood you."
No.
Her eyes hardened. Think carefully. You might rank high, but recommendations also depend on peer evaluations. Dorm leaders submit community feedback. In my first life, that threat would have worked because I did not know the rules. This time I did. Dorm leaders submit residents' conduct feedback, I said. You are temporarily suspended from that role pending review. Her expression flickered. Mrs. Calloway told me when she asked if I felt safe remaining in 7B. Bianca looked away for the first time. I stepped toward the stairs. Study, Bianca. You really think you're better than me? I paused.
No.
I think I became better than the version of myself who needed you to like me. She said nothing. I left her standing there in the dim stairwell while the automatic lights clicked off behind me one by one. The final exam itself was not poetic.
That almost disappointed me. No rain. No dramatic announcement. No collective collapse.
Just a bright morning, a room full of exhausted students, and a paper that cared nothing for dorm politics. It was harder than the mock but fairer than fear. I wrote until my hand cramped. I caught 2 traps because Priya had argued with me about them. I answered one emergency management question because Evie's ugly adrenal table had forced me to explain crisis priorities out loud. I smiled once during the exam, not because it was easy, but because the knowledge in my head had arrived there through my own struggle and honest collaboration. No one could steal that by copying a file. No one could frame it by screenshotting a table. It was inside me now. When the exam ended, students spilled into the courtyard dazed and sun-blind. Some cried. Some laughed. Some immediately began comparing answers, which is a form of self-harm universities should ban. I walked past them and sat under the jacaranda tree near the old science building. Purple flowers had fallen across the bench, like confetti from a celebration no one had scheduled. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Mara, is it done? It's done. How do you feel? I looked at the campus, at students moving in little clusters, at Bianca standing alone near the steps, while Celia spoke to Evie a few meters away.
Light, I said.
I feel light. My mother exhaled. In my first life, by this point, she had already begun worrying about lawyers and appeals, and whether my scholarship would vanish. This time she only said, "Then eat something. Light people still need lunch." I laughed so hard a passing student stared. Final results came out 2 weeks later. I ranked first. Not first in the dorm. Not first among the students who qualified for the workshop. First in the cohort. For a full minute, I sat in front of the portal and did not move. The number seemed unreal, almost too clean. 94. Rank 1. Recommendation. High distinction. Scholarship interview. Confirmed. I expected triumph to hit like lightning. Instead, I felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a fever breaks. I had spent so long imagining victory as the moment everyone who hurt me fell to their knees. But when it arrived, the best part was that no one was touching my work. My name stood alone. Evie burst into the room 30 seconds later, without knocking. I got 76, she shouted, then remembered walls existed and clapped both hands over her mouth.
Sorry.
I got 76. I stood and hugged her before either of us could become awkward about it. She froze, then hugged me back. You did that, I said. We did some of it. No, I said, pulling back. You did it. I asked annoying questions. She cried anyway. Celia passed with 62. She sent me a message that said, I know I don't deserve a reply, but I passed because I stopped copying. Thank you for telling me the truth when I hated you for it. I did not reply immediately. Later I sent, keep making your own notes. That was enough. Tanya scraped through with 51 and announced loudly that the exam was basically luck. Nobody argued. Some victories are too small to contest. Bianca failed. Not by much. 47. Close enough to hurt more than 31. Close enough that one correct reasoning chain could have saved her. Close enough that she could replay every hour she spent plotting instead of studying and know exactly where the marks went. The failure meant she lost eligibility for the recommendation cycle. It did not end her degree. It did not destroy her life. It simply removed the mask of inevitability. She was no longer the obvious future scholarship recipient, the obvious dorm leader, the obvious girl professors praised because she looked like success from a distance. She became a student who had failed an exam and tried to steal a laptop in the same month. A very different resume. The conduct review concluded the following week. Bianca received a formal residence warning, removal from dorm leadership, mandatory ethics training, and a note on her internal conduct file. Celia and Tanya received lesser warnings because they cooperated and admitted their roles. I received an email confirming that no academic integrity concern had been found regarding my materials, conduct, or exam performance. I printed that email, not because I needed it for anyone else, but because some wounds require paper proof that the knife missed this time. On the last night before winter break, Dorm 7B held a cleaning inspection. Everyone packed boxes, stripped beds, threw away dead highlighters, and expired instant noodles. The corridors smelled like dust and disinfectant. I was clearing my desk when Bianca appeared in the doorway. She looked different, not ruined. Bianca would never allow ruin to show without using it, but quieter, less polished around the edges. I'm transferring rooms next semester, she said. I heard. Of course you did. She looked at my locked drawer. Do you still hate me? I considered lying. It would have been socially smoother. Sometimes. Her mouth curved, not quite a smile. Honest. You ask. She stepped into the room, but did not come near my desk. That restraint was new. I used to think you were weak, she said, because you always said yes. I was weak. No, she said, surprising me. You are useful. I confused the two. I closed my notebook. So did I. For a while, neither of us spoke. Outside, Celia laughed at something Evie said. The sound floated through the doorway, ordinary and strange.
Bianca looked at me.
When did you decide to stop? The truth rose to my tongue. After I died. After you buried me, with my own notes. After I woke up with your fist on my wardrobe door and realized God, fate, or whatever runs this cruel universe had given me 4 days to become someone you could not use. But I could not say that. Some truths are too large for the rooms that create them. So I said, when I realize sharing with people who punish you for stopping isn't kindness, it's surrender. She absorbed that. Maybe she understood. Maybe she only stored it away to use later in a prettier sentence. Bianca's future was no longer my responsibility. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, your notes were good. I laughed once, softly. I know. She left. After she was gone, I unlocked my drawer and took out the blue folder. The original endocrine summary was still inside, untouched since Monday of that reborn week. The pages were neat, beautiful, dangerous in the wrong hands. I flipped through them slowly. They were not evil. My work had never been the problem. The problem was believing that giving everything away would make people treasure the giver. I placed the folder on my desk, opened my laptop, and created a new document titled, How to Build Your Own Review System. Not notes. Not answers. A method. How to read learning outcomes. How to identify patterns in lectures. How to test yourself before looking. How to turn confusion into questions. How to study with people without becoming their unpaid engine. I uploaded it publicly to the course forum under my own name. Within an hour, students from other dorms began commenting. Priya wrote, "This is excellent." Evie wrote, "The ugly table stage is painful but real." Celia wrote, "Wish I had learned this earlier." Tanya reacted with a thumbs up and then deleted it, which was the closest thing to growth I expected from her that month. Professor Harlan pinned the post the next morning with one sentence, "This is a useful framework for independent study." I stared at the pinned post for a long time. In my first life, my notes had traveled through secret chats, stripped of my name, turned into evidence against me. In this life, my work stood in the open, credited, bounded, impossible to twist into hidden misconduct because it did not give answers. It taught process. Anyone could use it. No one could own me through it. That was the ending Bianca never saw coming. I did not stop sharing because I hated them. I stopped sharing because I finally understood what sharing was supposed to mean. It was not bleeding into cups held by people who complained you did not bleed faster. It was not building ladders for people who kicked your hands when you climbed after them. It was not silence, guilt, or stolen passwords at dawn. Real sharing had a spine. It had consent. It had credit. It had the right to stop. Years later, when people asked how I ranked first after nearly burning every bridge in Dorm 7B, I never told them about Rebirth. I told them the truth small enough to be believed. I stopped confusing being needed with being respected. I stopped turning my survival into a group resource. I stopped handing my work to people who only called it suspicious after it saved them. And when the final mock came, the whole dorm failed not because I cursed them, sabotaged them, or hid some magical answer key, but because for the first time, the exam measured what each of us actually carried inside. I carried my own mind. They carried screenshots of mine. And when the papers turned over, that made all the difference.